Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have about 2 minutes until we start, but we should get started right on time. So I appreciate you waiting. Okay, so it is 1 p.m. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are joining us from today. And on behalf of the Environmental Finance Center Network, welcome to our webinar today on water system infrastructure financing. My name is Avery Davis, and I'm from the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. And before we begin, we're going to cover a few housekeeping items, and then we will get started. During the training today, everyone will be kept on mute to ensure audio quality. If you have a question, please type it into the GoToWebinar question dialog box anytime throughout the session. We will be saving your questions for a facilitated Q&A session at the end of the presentation. After the webinar, you will receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording from today and other information you may need. You can also download the slides from today in the Handouts tab in your GoToWebinar control panel. This webinar has not been submitted for pre-approval of continuing education credits, but eligible attendees will receive a certificate of attendance for their personal record. To receive a certificate for this session, you must attend for the entire webinar and register and attend individually using your real name and unique email address. Certificates will be sent within 30 days of the webinar date, and if you have any questions or need assistance, please contact us at smallsystems@syr.edu. Now for a little bit about the Environmental Finance Center Network. We provide training and technical assistance to small water and wastewater systems in all U.S. states and territories through our building technical, managerial, and financial capacity programs. If your community or utility needs assistance with drinking water or wastewater system management, please feel free to contact us through our request form, which I will be sharing shortly in the chat. And on that note, I would like to introduce our presenter for today. So we have John Sullivan, who is a senior research engineer at the Great Lakes Environmental Infrastructure Center at Michigan Technological University. So John, I'm making you a presenter, and welcome. We can get started.
Thank you. Thank you, Avery. As Avery has said, as Avery has indicated, today's webinar is on water system infrastructure financing. The steps you will need to get to your project to the money and to get it built. I've been with the Great Lakes Environmental Infrastructure for 6 years here at Michigan Tech. I spent 30+ years as a consulting engineer and mostly dealing with smaller communities, less than 10,000 population. I also spent 13 years in state and local government positions. Starting an infrastructure project requires money and financing. The balance of this presentation will focus on each of the 7 steps listed on this slide. Securing funding could be a multi-year process. Be patient. Funding will eventually be there. So the 7 steps are, number 1, identify the funding sources. 2nd, assemble a team of professionals. 3, create a project plan. And many times that will include a preliminary engineering report. Apply for the funding, secure the funding, design and build the project, then you operate it and maintain it, do the repair and replacement, and generate the rates to cover your O&M, repair and replacement, and debt service. There are generally 2 major money sources for your project. They're listed here as USDA Rural Development and the State Revolving Loan Funds. There are secondary funding sources. HUD has CDBG grants, Community Development Block Grants, and EDA has Economic Development Grants. There's other state programs also. The states receive HUD block grants for non-metropolitan communities with less than a 50,000 population. Communities who have greater than 50,000 population and urban counties receive their HUD block grants direct. So the state gets a chunk of money and then they use it to distribute it to the smaller communities, those less than 50,000 population. EDA grants are typically related to economic development in communities with high unemployment and low median household income. Several states have supplemental loan and grant programs to assist environmental infrastructure projects. The major environmental infrastructure funding mechanism, at least in the past, has been for small communities, has been USDA Rural Development. It's a national program. It provides a variety of grants and loans for water and wastewater projects. And it's primarily for small communities, population 10,000 or less. This program has been one of the most popular programs for municipalities with a population less than 10,000. We will go through the process of obtaining a USDA RD funding in detail. However, now with principal forgiveness for disadvantaged communities mandated by the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, which passed last year, and it's also known as the Bilateral Infrastructure Law, the bill. This makes the revolving loan funds offered by the states for clean water and drinking water projects a more desirable choice for funding by small communities. The USDA RD program and the RLF are both available in every state. USDA, they've got long-term loans up to 40 years available for both water and wastewater projects. The interest rates are generally below market rates and they vary quarterly and are based on the need for the project and the median household income of the area to be served. There's grants available to keep user costs reasonable. If the median household income is between 80% of the state non-metropolitan median household income and the state non-metropolitan median household income, the grant can be up to 45%. If the community median household income is less than 80% of the state non-metropolitan median household income, and the project is necessary to alleviate health or sanitary problems, the grant can be up to 75%. There are other factors that are considered for grants, and we'll get into those soon here. The interest rate is fixed as a maximum when funds are obligated. However, it can be lower at loan closing if the rates have gone down, but it's a max and it can be lower. The rates effective on July 1 of this year, the poverty rate was 2%, the intermediate rate 2.625, and the market rate 3.25. The median household income numbers are different in each state and are what rural development uses in determining the interest rate level and which communities qualify for grants. Other factors for grants include existing debt, O&M expenses projected, the number of equivalent dwelling units, the type of bond, and similar system utility charges. The goal is affordable annual user charge of 1.5% of the median household income for each water and sewer. Who may apply for RD funding? All public bodies and nonprofit organizations, federally recognized tribes, rural towns of 10,000 or less. If there's a regional project where the population, it would be over, up more than 10,000, but less than 20,000, it's possible, as long as all the communities within that regional project have a population of less than 10,000. The funds can be used to acquire, construct, or the improvements for the project for drinking water, sewage systems, solid waste, and stormwater. The funds can be used to cover legal and engineering fees, land acquisition, equipment acquisition, startup operations can be covered, construction period interest can be included, and the purchase of facilities. We'll go through the RD process. There's a pre-application, an application, a letter of conditions. Then you have to submit the plans and specs to rural development and the state agency for reviews and approval. Then secure all the permits and easements, bid the project, have a loan closing, and then finally the construction proceeds. The following slides will describe the contents of the application, which in the past was done in a paper format. Rural development is changing the application to an electronic format. So the application consists of that standard form 424, a brief project description, narrative, a preliminary engineering report, environmental review, customer information, which is very important. The project budget will be in the application, and there will also be the state and regional clearinghouse review submissions, and that varies a little bit from state to state. But also you need to have a public notice of intent to file with rural development within 60 days of the application. It needs to be advertised in local media. So that standard form 424, that's primarily applicant information, the employer ID, DUNS number, source of funds. Then the narrative gets into project history, the need, services provided, the beneficiaries, public perception, and a system map. A pre-application is very common and followed by an invite from RD for the full application. Customer information is the number of residential equivalent users, the REUs, also referred to as EDUs, equivalent dwelling units. And the user rate system is also, you need to furnish that to rural development. That's the charges for service. The project budget, you need to identify all sources of funds for the project. We'll spend a little bit of time on this slide. This is the customer user information for rural development. It's got several columns and a couple of lines. First line there, residential dwellings. You have to list the number of existing customers and the total monthly service use in gallons for all those residential customers. And then if you're doing improvements, you might be picking up some additional customers. So you want to list the number of users after improvements and then a projected total of monthly service fee in gallons. And then you'll calculate the equivalent dwelling units. And you'll do the same for commercial. All your non-residential users, how many are there? And what is their total monthly service use? So EDUs, as defined there, is sum of the monthly flow for residential units divided by the number of residential units. And then the non-residential unit, or EDUs, equals all the other flow, the commercial, industrial, schools, etc., divided by the EDU residential flow. So then you come up with the total number of EDUs. It's the total number of residential plus the total number of non-residential. You take the total number of EDUs times 1.5% of the community median household income gives you the total community annual affordable user charge. This table is an important one to be filled out. The data is used to calculate the amount of grant a community will be eligible for. First, you need to calculate that affordable loan. The affordable loan is related to the amount each household can afford, which is the affordable annual user charge. Rural development uses 1.5% of the median household income to determine the affordable annual user cost, which includes O&M, repair and replacement, and debt service. Rural development may use grant dollars to reduce the loan to the affordable annual user charge. To find out how many households are in a community, RD converts all water and sewer customers into those equivalent dwelling units. The equivalent dwelling unit is calculated by dividing the total monthly flow for all residential units, single-family dwelling units in the community, excuse me, by the number of residential units. This results in a monthly flow for the average dwelling unit, and this becomes the equivalent dwelling unit flow. The EDU, the equivalent dwelling unit flow, monthly flow is divided into all other monthly flows, commercial, industrial, institutional, to come up with the EDUs related to the non-residential flow. So now the total EDUs for the community are known. If there are no water meters, then 5,000 gallons per month per EDU is used to estimate the number of EDUs for all users. The O&M budget needs to include repair and replacement reserve for all equipment in the system with a life of less than 40 years. The debt service portion of the budget includes all existing debt, the proposed new debt, and a 10% debt reserve if the new debt is a revenue bond, which is typical. The total number of EDUs times the median household income times 1.5% is the amount of annual user charge that the community is assumed to be able to afford. From the affordable annual user charge, the O&M and the R&R repair and replacement portion of the 1.5% is calculated to find the affordable debt service. The affordable debt service would include the existing annual debt service payments and the new affordable annual debt service. The new affordable debt service divided by the capital recovery factor for the RD interest rate and term of loan, which is typically 40 years, results in the amount of affordable new debt. If the proposed project is $1 million and the affordable debt is $600,000, then $400,000 would be the amount of grant the project may be eligible for. There are other factors in the amount of grant determination. Number one, the state rural development agency needs to have the grant money. They get so much each year to dole out to communities, so they have to have the grant money. And if they don't have it in 1 year, you might have to wait in line for it next year. And also, the grant cannot reduce the EDU costs below similar systems costs. So here's some more on this slide about what's part of the total application. You need documentation. All these items have to be documented. You need a copy of that audit report, the annual audit report, or the most recent one for the community. You need a certificate of commercial, you need a certification of the commercial credit. And that means the funds, you have to be able to certify that the funds are not available privately at a reasonable interest rate. Then you need the documentation of the median household income, if it's less than, especially if it's less than the state poverty median household income. You need the documentation of other funding sources, documentation that you're consistent with the area comprehensive plan by the county or regional agency. And there's a certification regarding debarment suspension. You need an engineering agreement with your engineer and legal service agreement with your local attorney. The preliminary engineering report is an important part of the application. And this is the outline here is as shown. It gets into the project planning, what are the existing facilities, what's the need for the project, the alternatives to be considered, selection of an alternative, then there's the proposed project, the recommended alternative, and a project schedule and cost estimate, and then a recommendation. There's an environmental report as part of the application. The engineer or somebody will have to identify the wetlands and floodplains. You have wilderness areas, identify the rivers that might be within the area, cultural resources within the project area. Are we in a coastal area? Are we in a farmland area? How is your aquifer? What's the air quality, transportation, noise, underground storage tanks? All these things will be addressed in the environmental report. This slide is intended to summarize the grant procedure for rural development, where you've got the goal is an annual user cost of 1.5% of median household income. So the annual user cost is the O&M plus the debt service, where debt service equals the annual principal and interest payment. The state non-metropolitan median income is an important number. So the debt service, if it's greater than 0.5% of the annual user cost, and the median household income is less than 80% of that state non-metropolitan median income, then the grant can be up to 75%. Those two things have to happen. The debt service greater than 0.5% of the annual user cost, and the community median household income less than 80% of that state non-metropolitan median income. If the debt service is greater than 1.5% of the annual user cost, and the median household income is greater than 80% of that state number, however, less than 100% of the state number, then the grant can be up to 75%. If the median household income of the community is greater than that state non-metropolitan median household income, then there's no grant, market rate only. So again, summarizing, the RD program can provide grants for water, wastewater, and stormwater projects for communities less than 10,000 in population, typically. The loan term can be up to 40 years with low interest rates that vary quarterly. And the grants are available to assist communities, but the median household income has to be less than that state non-metropolitan median household income. And the median household income has to be greater than 80% in order to get the grant up to 45%. If the median household income is less than that 80% of the state number, the grant can be up to 75%. And if that median household income in the community is greater than the state number, there's no grant, it's all loan. That gold user fee, 1.5% of median household income. So 80% of the state non-metropolitan median household income. Let's take an example. If the state non-metro median household income is $50,000, then if the community, then the median household income for the community is $40,000. If the median household income is greater than 40,000 and less than 50,000, then a possible grant can be up to 45%. If the median household income is less than $40,000 in the community, then a possible grant of up to 75%. If the community median household income is greater than that state median household income, then the market interest rate of 3.25% as currently, and there's no grant assistance. Let's run through that example a little bit more detail. So, okay, you've got the community median household income of $40,000. 1.5% of that is $600. So the affordable monthly cost is $50. If the affordable monthly cost is higher than $50, then a grant is possible to lower the monthly cost to that amount. If the monthly cost is less than $50, then there's probably no grant dollars. It's going to be all loan. Grant funds cannot be used to lower user costs below similar system costs. There are two other USDA programs with grant assistance for pre-development costs, those engineering costs and preliminary engineering costs and planning costs. The water and waste disposal pre-development planning grants for population less than 10,000, and if the community median household income is less than poverty or below 80% of that state number, then the max grant is $25,000 or 75% of the cost, whichever is less. So there's some grant money available for those small communities who need the money. There's also special evaluation assistance for rural communities and households with a population less than 2,500. If the median household income is less than poverty or less than 80% of that state number. The max grant in this program is is $30,000 or 100% of the cost, whichever is less. So it's 100% grant possible. The interest rates do change sometimes with the RD program every 3 months. And a grant greater than 45% also requires a violation notice from the agency with the proper authority. USDA now requires the application to be submitted electronically. The online application addresses all the items presented in the previous slides. So there's a 4-step process with the electronic application. Step 1 is you come up with a level 2 e-authorization ID. It just requires some personal information such as a social security number, and there's four security questions. And then step 2 deals with the authorized representative and a legal name of the municipality, and you can name some other users. And then step 3 is the authorized representative request, a point of contact. You submit to RD, and RD approves and links your e-authorization ID to your municipal employee ID. Step 4 is to log into RD, apply, and create the application. This is an important slide. Rural Development Letter of Conditions. It lists all the conditions to be met before the project can proceed, and there will be several. It also obligates the funds and sets the interest rate. That letter comes out, your funds are obligated and your interest rate is set. It sets a construction timeline. It provides details on disbursement, cost overruns, excess use of remains. It sets the loan repayment schedule and reserves. It lists requirements for users, taxes, hookups, budget, insurance, bonding, site agreements, audits, and compliance. A lot of requirements. It requires a right-of-way map and title opinions, and this can be a time-consuming step. Making sure that right-of-way map is accurate and that you have all the title opinions on property that is owned by the community or proposed to be owned by the community. And then you need the final construction plans and specifications approved by rural development and a state agency. So this letter of conditions is issued once the application is complete and accepted by USDA RD. Again, the interest rate is a max at this time, and it can be lower at loan closing. If it's lower at loan closing, you get that rate. Permits and easements. There are several that are needed. There's the state agency construction permit. There might be a permit needed from Department of Transportation, from the County Road Commission, state agency for wetlands, if you got those happening, stream crossings. You might need a U.S. Fish and Wildlife permit, something from the Corps of Engineers, and then possibly private party construction and permanent easements. They have to be acquired and in hand before you can proceed with construction. Finally, bid the project. Got everything approved, you can bid the project. You place the ad in a local newspaper, 30-day minimum notice, and you send the bid ad to all qualified contractors. You want to make sure everybody who can bid is aware of the bid period. You notify builders exchanges and trade magazines. Then you open the bids publicly, you review the bids, meet with the lowest bidder to review the project and request RD approval to award the bid. Then you award the bid to the low qualified contractor. Then there's a loan closing. You schedule the loan closing, there's a resolution that's necessary, and you'll have the listed attendees at that loan closing. Then there's the construction process. There's periodic progress meetings, monthly pay requests, monthly drawdown of the RD loan and grant proceeds, monthly approvals by the grantee to pay the contractor. And once the construction's complete, there's a final punch list with the contractor and final payment. The state revolving loan funds, 2 programs are available. This is the other source of money other than rural development, state revolving loan funds. There's a clean water state revolving fund, which has low interest rate, low interest loans, and a drinking water state revolving fund with low interest loans. And now there's principal forgiveness also. And principal forgiveness is equal to a grant. Disadvantaged, they typically go to only disadvantaged communities and where there's an affordability issue, the median household income and annual user costs. And possibly you can get some principal forgiveness with green project components. The 1987 amendments to the Clean Water Act was a shift from grants for specific projects to clean water capitalization grants to states to create revolving loan funds. Each state has a 20% match required. So, from early 70s when EPA was created, there was a construction grant program, but then in 1987, the law was changed to end the construction grants that went directly to communities. And now there's the capitalization grants that go to states to create these revolving loan funds. The Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund can do wastewater treatment and collection sewers. The Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund was deemed successful, and a similar program was started for drinking water in 1996. So after 9 to 10 years of the Clean Water Revolving Loan Funds for sewer projects, wastewater treatment projects, they started the feds created the Drinking Water Revolving Loan Funds. The 1996 amendments to the Safe Drinking Water Act included capitalization grants for states to create the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Funds. So the program is a state-operated program to provide loans and other financial assistance for public drinking water improvement projects. The Safe Drinking Water Act requires that states provide 20% matching funds to federal dollars in order to capitalize the program. Therefore, every $1 invested by the state secures 5 federal dollars. The Drinking Water Program provides fundings to public water systems to improve or replace water system pipes, treatment plants, storage tanks, and sources of water to ensure safe drinking water and provide essential public health protection. Funding for drinking water infrastructure improvement projects are available as low-interest loans. Disadvantaged community water systems can receive further assistance through principal forgiveness. Some states allow a direct loan from the revolving loan fund to the municipality. However, many states require the loan to be collateralized with municipal bonds. Thus, an attorney who specializes in municipal bonds will need to be involved. Here's some detail on the Federal Water Pollution Control Act. The federal money is a grant to the state, and it is up to each state to set up the parameters for getting to the money through the revolving loan funds. The feds provide guidelines as to how much of the federal grant can be used as a set aside for various programs. The set aside is generally a max of 30% of the federal grant and can be used to subsidize disadvantaged communities with lower interest rates. Can be used to provide principal forgiveness. Can be used to provide technical assistance. Some states are more aggressive than others in these regards. Many states also use poverty data and the sewer use charges as a percent of median household income to determine affordability and thus principal forgiveness criteria. The Drinking Water State Revolving Fund is similar to the Clean Water Program, and there's a maximum of 31% of the federal grant that we can use for the state various programs. In 2018, one part of the Federal American Water Infrastructure Act allowed disadvantaged communities to finance their water system project up to 40-year max for the life of the facility. Previously, the max loan was 30 years. So in the last 5 years, some communities have been able to go up to 40 years for their loan. However, it's up to each state to make the change in their drinking water program. In some states, that may require a change in the state legislation to allow the extended time period for the loan. There's supplemental project funding. The American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, a year ago, 1.9 trillion was distributed to state and local units of government over 2 years. Half of the money went out in May of 2021 and the other half in May of this year. Then there's also the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. 1.2 trillion was distributed to state governments over 5 years. And this includes 50 billion for EPA state revolving loan fund programs. And that 50 billion has the caveat of 49% of that has to be principal forgiveness for disadvantaged communities. Some states are using the American Rescue Plan dollars to provide 100% grants for projects in disadvantaged communities. The Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, which is also known as the Bilateral Infrastructure Law, the bill, makes the state revolving loan fund programs attractive to small disadvantaged communities with low median household income and population less than 10,000. Principal forgiveness has the same effect as a grant. Previous to this law coming, the rural development program seemed to be the best way for small communities to go. But now with the new Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act and this requirement of sending 49% of the EPA money to small disadvantaged communities, it makes this program very attractive to small communities. So the next step in the financing process, you have to have a team of professionals needed to assist the community. The 3 areas of expertise are financial, legal, and technical. Financial is a consultant to assist with financial projections. The legal is a local attorney to review contracts, land issues, and project details. If the state requires municipal bonds as collateral for debt, then a bond counsel is also needed to provide a legal opinion on the bonds and the related paperwork. Then the technical, you need an engineer to assist with the funding application and prepare that preliminary engineering report, do the project design, prepare the construction plans and specifications, bidding documents, and do the construction oversight. The selection of that team of professionals. You want that financial consultant and bond counsel to have experience with the agency and program that's being considered. You want a local attorney, someone you can work with and who can complete assignments in a timely manner. Selection of the engineer. This is extremely important. Many communities have a working relationship with an engineer or engineering firm. A new major project should present a reason for the community to select the most qualified engineer and engineering firm available. The process for selection is QBC, quality-based selection. It's not a selection based upon low price. It is not a bid process. The process is to, one, you prepare a formal request for qualifications. The RFQ must be advertised publicly, should include the planning, design, and construction project services, and the criteria should be demonstrated competence and qualifications for the type of project being considered. You review the submitted statement of qualifications, prepare a short list, and interview at least 3 firms. And this process is normally required for EPA and Community Development Block Grant funding. Interview the engineer. Be sure the person you are interviewing and meeting with is going to be the project manager assigned to your project. You don't want to be interviewing just the marketing person. Communication skills are critical. You want someone with experience with the type of project that you may have and the funding programs to be used. You want to discuss the anticipated concepts and methods with that engineer. You want to secure and check references, both local government and funding agencies. It would be wise to visit a community where an engineer did a similar project. Ask questions about communications, project planning, design process, change orders, budgets. The engineer should be well acquainted with all the funding programs presented in the previous slides. In small communities, the engineer will be taking the lead and applied for the project funding and taking care of all details. The discussion of concepts and methods is an opportunity to discuss the engineer's mode of thinking. Here's a little matrix for scoring the interviews. These slides will be available, as Avery has indicated. Engineering fees will be fairly significant in the range of 10 to 20% of the total project cost. It could be higher and probably never less. The engineer's contract. You want to negotiate a contract with the most qualified engineer and firm. Compensation needs to be fair and reasonable. If contract negotiations with the preferred engineer are not satisfactory to the community, you move on to the next firm. In the preliminary phase, the engineer will assist in defining the project, prepare that project proposal or preliminary engineering report, and assist in preparation of funding the application of proposal. Assist with presenting the project to the public. In a small community, the engineer generally requests with all application details. The application details are that project narrative with the items listed. You need documentation from the state agency. You need the state and regional clearinghouse submittals. If the project is necessary to protect public health, or the environment, you need to secure letters documenting from that state agency. Such a letter is necessary for some programs to qualify for grants. The application will deal with the State Historic Preservation Officer, with the environmental assessment and evidence of community financial need. The engineer will assist with those details. The preliminary engineering report, which is required by USDA, has these. This is an outline of that report. Public participation is always important. It's vital to the success of the project. You need best to have newspaper articles, notices with billing statements, mass mailings. A public hearing is generally required by the funding agency. You need to win community support. Here's some listed methods. Contact your likely supporters first and publicize their support. Know your opposition. Show the benefits of the project. Listen to the community and respond. Fill in information gaps. Don't overwhelm people with technical data. In the design phase, the engineer will create design documents, directs all the investigations for soil borings, bench tests, prepares the construction plans and specifications, directs the necessary surveys for land and easements needed, applies for and secures all necessary permits, assembles bidding and contract documents. Generally, the design phase does not start until funding is secured, as this phase will require a substantial financial commitment in the range of 5 to 10% of the project costs. Soil borings may be needed for building foundation design and to determine underground conditions for barrier utilities. Soil borings assist the engineer during the design process and the contractor during the bidding phase. Bench tests are normally performed for water and wastewater treatment processes. Plans and specs are needed for submittal to funding and regulatory agencies for approvals, as well as for the contractor for bidding and construction. The engineer may assist the owner in securing necessary easements and land acquisition. In addition to construction specifications, there are required contract documents which vary with the different funding agencies. However, basic documents include general and project-specific conditions, bonding and insurance requirements, forms for the contract payment requests, and change orders. During the construction phase, the engineer will assist with the bid advertisements, will review the submitted bids, recommend selection of the low qualified bidder, oversee completion of the contract documents, monitors construction progress and payments, reviews and recommends change orders, conducts construction testing, inspection, and oversight, and then prepares the final punch list and project closeout. So once money is actually available, then the construction phase begins. That bid ad is placed, the engineer and local attorney review the executed contract documents. Construction payments are generally due monthly. Change orders are to be expected, and generally there is a contingency budget item provided for such. Engineers are not perfect. There may be errors in the design or unforeseen conditions in the field, thus changes in the construction that warrant extra time and extra payment to the contractor. Thus, a change order is necessary. Okay, the system's built. Now you've got to operate and maintain that system. You've got to establish a budget and rate structure to cover operations, maintenance, repair and replacement reserves, debt service, and reserve funds. That is the end of the presentation. It's now time for questions. Avery, do we have any questions? I'll put my contact information slide up, so the slides, the webinar and slides will be available at the EFCN network.org. If at a later date a question comes up on any part of this presentation, do not hesitate to contact me. I appreciate your attention for the last 55 minutes.
Thanks, John. We don't have any questions at the moment, but we can wait a few minutes to see if any roll in. But like John said, if you have any questions that come up following the webinar, you are welcome to contact him with the information on the slide there. And I guess while we're waiting to see if any questions roll in, I'm going to go ahead and let you all know that following this webinar, all of those who attended today will receive a follow-up email with the slides and a link to the recording. You will also, we also ask that you complete the webinar evaluation following this session. That way you can let us know your thoughts on today's session and other topics you might be interested in taking webinars or trainings on in the future. Yeah, thank you again.
I could have spent more time on some of those slides.
We're just getting some comments in the chat, some thank yous. So it looks like someone would be interested in the use of income surveys to improve eligibility.
Yeah, that's sometimes the median household income that's available through the U.S. Bureau of Census does not accurately reflect the project area. And so an income survey could be done. Rural development, at least in some of the states, allow that to happen, but you've got to make sure you got the right qualified person doing that and someone who's approved by rural development to do that. But that's something that can be done.
Great, thank you. It doesn't look like there are any other questions, so I think we can go ahead and wrap up for today. So thank you, John, for sharing your expertise with us today. And thank you all for attending. And like I said, you'll receive the slides and the recording. And if you have any questions that come up after the webinar, please feel free to reach out. So yeah, thank you all. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. John, do you have any? Oh, thank you. So, do you have any last or final words for our audience?
Don't hesitate to contact me if you have a question.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
Take care.